all around you.
As the fish have been taken by foreign fleets, fishermen like Adama have been left with an impossible decision. Should he leave his family and risk the dangerous journey to Europe?
Fish goes, the people are made poorer, and what happens? They try to immigrate. The Europeans like our fish, but they don't like the people. The fish has visa to come in, but the people are tender.
I think that man is not going to change, and the sea going to be dead, because man is crazy. We are crazy. Our world is crazy world.
In the restaurants of Asia, diners are buying live fish in greater quantities than ever before. These are being taken from the most beautiful parts of the planet, the Coral Triangle. The Coral Triangle is an area of ocean half the size of the United States in the seas of southern Asia. Coral reefs were targeted as a food supply when local waters ran out. The most desirable fish are the reef's large, colorful predators. Our insatiable appetite for such delicacies threatens to tip the fragile balance of nature into chaos.
We don't know what the implications are of losing some of these very, one particular component of the ecosystem. We just know that in other ecosystems there have been problems, and that when we mess around with nature, there's usually problems.
On the east coast of America, there is a terrifying clue of what can happen when you disturb the ocean's natural equilibrium. In Chesapeake Bay, there have been increasing reports of a plague of biblical proportions. A little-known inhabitant of the bay, the cow-nosed ray, has exploded in numbers. Local scientist Pete Peterson was investigating the increase in the cow-nosed ray population when he noticed that the graph of their growth was the exact opposite of the graph of the decline in their main predator, the shark.
Even a number of quality scientists will tell you that, that statistics are in some ways icing on the cake when you do your science. But to tell you the truth, as you look at a plot of how the numbers of sharks along this coast have changed, how the numbers of rays, skates, and smaller sharks have changed at the same time, you don't need a statistic at all. It jumps right off the page at you.
When large predators are taken out, when they're depleted in abundance as much as they are, we have large ecosystem effects that can cause all sorts of domino effects throughout the ecosystem.
There's evidence of this knock-on effect happening all over the world. In Newfoundland, lobster numbers are exploding.
The loss of cod and other bottom-dwelling fishes, what we have seen is an increase in the abundance of other things. So in this part of the Atlantic, there's always been a fair number of lobster, but there's now evidently quite a bit more. So it seems fairly reasonable to conclude that the decline of cod and other predatory fishes basically paved the way for an increase in the abundance of those things that cod used to eat.
Fishermen have eagerly fed off the bonanza. There is big money to be made in lobster, but how long will it last?
This is the situation that happens everywhere we have removed the fish, the large fish. In many places, what has exploded is the shrimp. Shrimp have exploded. It's good shrimp, good money, but if you fish them, what then?
The end point is when the prawns and the scallops too have gone. We really will be down to a highly simplified ecosystem of mud and worms.
Jellyfish infestations are increasing. Beaches are becoming no-go zones. Our oceans, once full of large fish, are now filling up with algae, plankton, and worms.
We're losing species. What does that mean for us? What does that mean for society? What does it mean for the predictability of the global oceans, which is 70% of the planet? And the answer is, with every species that disappears, some of those services are eroding. There's less food, there's declining water quality, and there's declining stability of the system.
According to data collected by the United Nations, the number of fish species whose populations have crashed is growing year by year. Worm and the other scientists have projected that if the current trends continue, the stocks of fish which we now eat will have collapsed by the middle of the century.
All the fish and invertebrates that we eat, that supply us with seafood, we found that by 2003, about 1/3 of them were in what we call collapse state. Over the last 50 years, there was a very, very clear trend of year after year after year, more of these species were in that collapse category. And it's not rocket science, because if we're depleting one species after another, it's a finite resource. There will be a point in the future where we will run out if we don't change the way we treat this global resource.
Whoever makes an extrapolation makes it always assuming that things remain the same. And I would say that assuming that things remain the same, this prediction that we will have no fish in 50 years or so are essentially correct.
When the human population comes under real pressure on land, when we begin to have real problems from global warming, when we start running out of enough food to feed ourselves, we have just squandered one of the greatest resources that we've ever had on the planet, wild fish. That's what it means.
For generations, men have hunted the world's oceans. For generations, we have eaten fish. What can our generation do to stop us reaching the end of the line?
Lots of the time people say, where are all the fish, 90% of the fish gone? Where are they? Well, we have eaten them. That's what we have. We have eaten them.
When we look at a piece of fish on our plate, what do we know about that fish? We know it's good for us. We know it's probably got some omega-3 fatty acids, which are good for all our organ functions. But what else do we know about it? What do we know about it? Do we know what species it is even? Do we know whether it was caught legally or illegally, or in the waters of some distant country where the inhabitants would actually prefer to have caught it themselves? Hello, Ingrid. It's Charles Clover from the Daily Telegraph. I noticed that marlin was on the menu. This is a kind of an unusual fish to find on the menu. And I wondered which species of marlin this was, because I thought there wasn't an awful lot of marlin left.
Both these fish, the bluefin tuna... British journalist Charles Clover has been trying to find out what is sold in some of the most exclusive restaurants of the world. After 5 years of no comment, eventually Nobu agreed to talk.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Clover. How are you?
Hello, Mr. Notar. How are you?
I feel like I know you.
We've got a fish that is actively been described as endangered since 1996. And you're serving it in your restaurants.
Not only are we going to describe what it is on the menu, I'm going to put an asterisk next to it, and on the bottom of the menu, I'm going to say, you know, it is an endangered, environmentally endangered species, just so people know. That's the first immediate step that we can do. Then we also...
It's a sort of hard sell, you know, here's some endangered species. Are people going to buy that, do you think? The question people will want to know is why you just don't take it off the menu now.
If you've got orangutans and, you know, cheetahs and lions and tigers and things on that menu, I mean, people would, you know, be walking away. There'll be a huge scandals. There'll be tabloid stories about it. People would be execrated. There would be turds on people's doorsteps and in envelopes being shoved through them. People would, you know, burn each other's houses down, scratch their cars, and yet we're doing it to things in the sea, and we're doing the same thing.
This dish is modern, cool, refreshing, looks really, really, like, flashy, but it's dead simple. So I've got some beautiful bluefin tuna.
Now that these kind of popular television programs with celebrity chefs have made fish fashionable, is it too late to save the world's oceans?
People ask me all the time, are you despairing or are you hopeful? And I say, I'm absolutely hopeful. We have a much better understanding than even 5 years ago of what's going on. Like with pollution, like with ozone depletion, with climate change more recently, things started to happen and people made changes.
Alaska is on the front line in the battle to conserve fish. Alaska has a 200-mile fishing limit, which it strictly enforces.
Portlock Bank, coordinates are going to be 56. It appears that they've been fishing in one area and they're claiming another.
One of the lessons from Alaska is first you have to not allow new boats to enter, and you have to find mechanisms to get some boats to leave.
Alaska's fishing policy is not perfect, but the number of fishing boats here is and react accordingly.
One of the differences between Alaska and, let's say, the North Sea is that the average exploitation rate on stocks in Alaska is on the order of 10% a year. In the North Sea, it's 50%.
If you look at it from just a personal perspective, sometimes there's a personal sacrifice. But you take that knowing that it gives you an opportunity to maybe have a better season 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. We just don't want to catch